Hi everyone, it's Niamh here and welcome to my art journaling channel. Today we're going to be creating 2 art journal pages in about 50 minutes. Now this is a technique I use a lot. I work concurrently on 2 pages, particularly when I have a page that I'm working on. I think, oh, I really don't like this page, so I'm going to do something else while I'm working on it. So I'm starting off in my large Illusions journal, it's not my Dina Wakley journal, and I've got a whole heap of collage bits and pieces around. So I've got Dina Wakley collage tissues, which are what these heights are, and the other bits of printed paper you can see around are from the Dina Wakley collage collective book. So I've cut bits and pieces out of it. These are the offcuts, and they're all beautifully printed. I've got some really interesting things on them, so I collect them and stick them into my journal as just sort of background journal bits and pieces that, you know, if things come up through that I can see, that's fantastic. If they don't, I can paint over them and get a bit of texture on my page. So I'm just sort of gluing, overlapping, adding in the collage. You can see with that tissue it's awesome because it goes translucent, so you just sort of get the impression in the background. You can still see what's happening behind it, and it works really well. And I'm just using some gel medium to glue all that down. So that really interesting coloured paint that I put down is actually yellow, as you can see. That's one of the fluid acrylics from Finnabair, which is a part of Prima, I think, and it dries really quickly. And I've been having lots of fun playing around with these. And I was finding that they were really good for doing ghosting techniques. So you put them down and then you rub the paint off and you come back to them. In hindsight, looking at that now, I probably should have left it just like that, because I got a little bit carried away with my layers, my colours, and I just kept adding, which is an issue for me. But those people who follow my channel for a while, you know, it's an addiction I'm not going to solve anytime soon. It's just what I do. So I keep adding layers. So adding the red over the top, it just automatically darkened it. It's a beautiful colour, but it just didn't work the way I wanted it to, and I wasn't sure what I was going to go with it. Now you can see there, I had my collage collective open and I had this beautiful page which I really loved, and usually I cut into it, but this time I just decided to glue this page down as it was, because I could see that the colour that I had in my background kind of really tied in with it. So I'm just sort of painting around it and adding that page into my journal and doing some ghosting over it. And I do this an awful lot, particularly if on one page I've got something that I really don't like, I'm struggling with. I tend to just change what I'm doing and go on to another page. So I wasn't liking that red in the background, so I decided to add the blue over it. Now you can see obviously that, you know, with the yellow layers underneath, that turned that beautiful blue into an almost green. You can see on the other page where I had the blue and the pink together, I've got those lovely purple colours coming through. So it really does all come down to thinking about your layers and thinking about how colours work together. Because I was sort of overlaying, you see those really dark tones that are almost turning brown. And it was just beginning really dark for me, and I didn't know what to do. So as I do, if I wasn't sure what to do on one page, I go back to the other page and start to work on that. So I wanted to add a little bit to this page. I knew I didn't want to do too much to it. But I wanted to add something else to it. So because I already had that sort of text down the bottom, I thought I'd add in this, so spill and write and spill and write. So I went sort of back in with my sponge while I sort of put the darker ones on the outside, and then went back sort of to do a second print with the second one, so it's slightly lighter. And then I'm going in with some foam stamps, just sort of in those circles to sort of set that off. So I was really happy with how that second page is going. Not so much with the first page. So as I had my mark making stamps out, I thought, oh well, why not? Let's just have a go. And I thought by adding white back into the page, that might help the situation. Not sure it did. but it sort of lightened up some of those really dark areas, which helped. So this is the Jane Davenport Squid Ink. I'm finding, or I have found, that the white is particularly opaque. It works really well over the top of things, so I've been enjoying using that as a really good contrast. While I had the mic making stamps out, I headed over to my other page and put some extra mics there too. So now I'm just going in, still really unsure of what to do on that left hand side page. So I'm going with my Stabilo Oil Pencil onto the right hand page, and this is something I do tend to do an awful lot, is if I've got a collage image or a figure or something that's glued out, I tend to go back in and draw over it myself. The reason for that is I love those black lines. It helps pop whatever is out from the background, but it also helps me get into that really loose drawing style, because I'm kind of tracing over the lines. Not really, because they're all my own lines, but I've got those loose lines as a guide underneath. There's no way I could sit there and draw a face like that if I didn't have that guide, but I quite like having those drawn lines over the top. Also, by extending it down to the bottom, it grounds that image on the page. So because I knew I needed to do something to the other page, I was racking my brain, and I thought, oh, I'll just go back to this stencil, which is a Donna Downey stencil, which I really love. And I'm just stenciling that onto the page, and I'm using black. Now, it's a really, really busy background. So my idea was that I was going to paint out some of the background because it was so busy, just to put a focus on the image itself. And I decided, because it was so dark, that I would use white paint to paint it out. So I'm just going in with some white gesso around my image, just to sort of create a focus around it. Now, I didn't do a really thick layer of white around it. I just sort of used my brush and brushed it out, so you sort of just get that ghosting image around it. And that helped to calm this page down somewhat. But it was still, it's still very dark, and it just wasn't sitting right for me. I was really sort of struggling with what I could do with this page to sort of bring it together. So I'm just drawing down my layers and sort of thinking about how to add something in. I'm going with my Stabilo Oil Pencil to sort of darken up some of those lines. Again, sort of those stenciled image for the same reasons I did it on the other page, just to sort of bring it out again. I've got my white Stabilo Oil Pencil too, which I'm sort of going in with. I find, unless I'm working on a black page, I don't get much of a result with my white Stabilo Oil Pencil, which sometimes is a little bit frustrating. I also chose to water activate my pencil, which in hindsight probably was a bit of a mistake, and you can see me sort of blotting it off there because I wasn't 100% sure about it. So you can see me sort of sitting there thinking, what am I going to do? How am I going to fix this? I do that an awful lot. I did decide to ground my figure, so I've painted out the background. So I've got that dark area that she's now sitting on. I'm just drawing that out. So I used black gesso to do that. So you can see it's got a really matte finish. And I decided to put a quote on my image. And I've also just decided, because obviously my page wasn't busy enough, that I needed to put some stamping into the white. Yeah, I was just throwing everything I had at this page at this stage. I've got these quote stickers from Finnabair that I was looking through to see if I could use one of those on the page, but they're all printed on sort of creamy colours, and it didn't quite work with the page. It wasn't big enough, the quote, and it needed something in the, well, I thought it needed something in the top right hand corner. When I put the stamp on, I really, really liked it. Thinking about this now, it's because it had the white background on it, so again it blocked out some of that background. I thought stamping it white would work. It didn't quite, so I had to go back in and fix it afterwards. So again, there's sort of a lot of playing around with things. with this page. So going in and stamping it, it kind of worked, but it just sort of went into the background a little bit too much. It wasn't, the contrast wasn't there enough for the page. So I decided to go back in and stamp in black and offset it somewhat so it's got a bit of a shadow. Now, if you were doing this, I would certainly suggest, if you're not confident with lining it up, use a stamp press. The good thing about the Stampers Anonymous stamps, this is a Tim Holtz stamp, is that they are cut really, really close to where the stamped image is. So you can sort of line it up pretty accurately by eye if you're careful with it. Once I stamped over it with the black, I decided I needed to put the paint pen over the top again just to darken it up. Now, obviously there's some shine on this page. The liquid acrylics are a gloss or a semi-gloss finish, so it does give the page a little bit of a shine, which is beautiful in real life, but it's really hard to sort of film, so I do apologise for that. So when I tip it back again, you should be able to see the shadow or the drop shadow now and how it sort of pops out from the background. And I'm going back in with a white paint pen just to again make the contrast a little bit better. So I suppose you could say it was a bit pointless stamping it out, but the stamping gave me the outline that I could copy. I couldn't do that lettering myself, so having the stamp there as a guide really helped. So just going in around sort of the rivety bits of the quote and the outside edges, and then that's what the page ended up as. So I ended up with one page I really adored and one page I didn't, but within 50 minutes I was able to make 2 pages of my art journal. So that's my trick, I suppose. I do tend to work very quickly anyway, but having 2 pages next to each other that I can work on concurrently really helps, because I've got my stamps and stencils out. I'm putting extra paint onto the pages. You know, it's all there at my fingertips that I can use. And if I get stuck on one page, I can go onto the other page and hopefully get inspired by that and come back to the page that I'm stuck on. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, bye for now.